Welcome back, guys. My name is Chris Patrick, and today we are going to continue our Mudboss build series. This is video number 4, so let's get closer to the workbench, and we're going to get straight into today's topic. Welcome back, guys. I appreciate you all stopping in and watching some video footage of our Mudboss build video series. Today is probably the most important video out of any of the videos during this video series. So if you was to take one piece out of this entire build series, take this information I'm about to give you very seriously. So the biggest problem with all series when it comes to spec racing is trying to free up as much power as you possibly can in any of your builds and making your car have more power. Legally, of course. So tearing apart your transmission and freeing up your bearings is hands down the most critical and most important part to getting the most speed out of any vehicle. It does not matter what kind of vehicle it is. So if you're doing it for off-road buggy or trucks, like stadium trucks, it all applies across the board to all of the hobbies that uses this style of transmission setups. So first things are first is you have to tear apart the car and get the transmission out. There's a couple different ways you can go about doing it. Everybody has their way of doing it, and how I'm going to do it is start by removing these set screws for the drive shafts. Which is, by the way, a 1.5 millimeter. Next step is going to be removing the bottom hinge pins and the top bracket that mounts your shock posts to the transmission housing. So flip it over. That's going to be, I believe, a 2.5 millimeter. And I'm going to do that to both sides. So that's that. You can pull your drive shafts out now. They should be free. Go ahead and flip this guy back over. And you should have 2 screws, which are these two, to get out. And it should be a 2 millimeter. And some tools you can get onto it this way. So I'm using a ball-tipped MIP tool. I wouldn't suggest going straight on with a flush standard Allen head, because you'll probably round off those threads. So you could get away with removing just the body post. And that would give you enough room. That should. Yep, that's free there. So now the last part's going to be removing these 6 screws that holds this base plate to the transmission. That should be enough to get that free. So let's set this chassis aside. And we're going to talk about how to get this torn apart. So you may have more pieces on here, like from the rear bumper. You don't need them. That's why I didn't put it back on when I reassembled this during the original cleanup. But if you remember, I didn't clean this transmission. And just to show you, there's still dirt on here. That's why I wanted to leave this dirt, is to let you know that I haven't touched this yet. So let's go ahead. We're going to slowly tear this apart And this is where I'm going to suggest you get a little bit more organized with your screws and pay a little bit of attention as to how you're disassembling it. So grab your favorite 2mm wrench of sorts that you have. That should be all of the screws that are going to hold this together. So when you take them out, set them in the order of how you remove them. So that's going to be the bottom in the middle. That's going to be the back left. This one's going to be the middle. And then the top left, top middle, and top right. And then now you are ready to go ahead and split apart your case. So there we have it. We have our two halves. I'm going to pull out our top shaft, our idler pulley, the gear for that. And then I'm going to go ahead and push out all of these bearings. Pay attention, your your top shaft on the bottom side has a washer that goes on there, and that is to protect the set pin from gouging your bearing. So pay attention to that. I forgot to mention that when you tear it apart. Grab yourself like a small pick and work yourself underneath this bearing. Work your way around, and then what you're trying to do is wedge that bearing out. So that side is fully disassembled. Let's go ahead, take this side apart, which is your differential and your bearing. And it's that easy. So that's how you tear apart one of these. And I am going to clean up this top shaft. Get that nice and clean. And also I am going to clean the differential. And actually we'll go ahead and tear this apart real fast so I can show you what the inside looks like. Because this is just as important as getting cleaned out, and free is just as much as important as it is getting your bearings free. So a lot of people will run diff grease or other alternative kinds of fluids in here. It is personal preference. I am going to show you how I do it, but that doesn't mean it's the best way. I personally use a really thin oil on my differentials, and I will explain why once we go to putting this back together. So I'm going to set those screws for the differential to the side, and then you should be able to pull this thing apart slowly and gently. And you notice I got a shaft, and it should have came apart like that, which is okay. So inside here you've got 4 individual shafts with 4, I'm going to call them idler gears. And what happens is this one rides in the center, and it spins the top 2 gears, which then in turn spins the bottom 2 gears, and then that spins one side and the top side. So that's how the energy is transferred from one side of the diff to the other. And the problem with this grease is it allows the differential to posi-track or have traction on both sides at the same time. And when you're trying to do oval racing, that is a bad thing. A lot of times you're going to push because you have both tires gripping up and they don't want to spin accordingly. So getting all of this grease out of here and allowing this differential to work freer actually gives you better handling characteristics on corners. It allows your car to rotate a little bit better. This is 100% a tuning option. A lot of people will run these bigger cars because they have such big tires and they have so much grip to begin with, that they find out that they don't need all of this grip, so they will run lighter diff fluids because the tires have so much grip. So this is about as far as I'm going to need to get this apart. So let's set this guy aside, set this aside, and what I typically do is I've got these small parts containers that I purchased off of Amazon. They are fantastic for putting small components in and pieces, and these are your metal parts that I'm putting in here. So I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to get this idler gear all the way apart as well. We're going to put that guy in there. All of this I'm going to soak in brake cleaner and stir it up, and I'm trying to get all of the grease and the gunk out of it. So I'm going to get all of this cleaned up, so the internal of the differential, these metal components, and the case. I'm not touching the bearings at this moment, and then I will bring you guys back once I have all of that clean. So bear with me, guys. I'll be right back. With the differential completely torn apart and cleaned, this is the amount of gunk and crap that came out of that. And that's disgusting. So it's predominantly dirt and the grease that was caked up inside of your differential. So got everything component-wise clean to the best of my abilities that I was able to get apart and clean. I didn't get it completely spotless, but I got, I don't know, probably 95% of the grease out of this container and all of the contaminants and every other gunk that's out there. So start by putting in one of your output shafts and go ahead and slide that in. And then you're going to take one of 4 of your idler gears that you have and set one in. And you're going to gently put it in and twist as it goes in. And then you're going to check to make sure that it spins and it's free and everything works. And then go to the opposite side of that, because these two are the lowest of the 4. And then same thing, don't force it, gently push down like with your finger and spin until it slides all the way down. What you're doing is you're lining up your gear mesh so that it slides and seats as far as it needs to go down. And then you're going to go ahead and do the opposite too. You can do them at the same time if you want, but you're checking to make sure everything lines up, everything's still nice and smooth and free. And then you can put this one on here and spin it until it seats itself in, just like so. And now you have a differential that allows you to spin. And what I typically use is going to be rim oil. It's the same thing I use in all my bearings. I've used this in the past with other builds. It works very, very well for this application. It's designed for high heat firearm applications, to be exact. It's made by Remington. It's called rim oil. You can buy it at Walmart or any other sporting goods center that sells it. It's a big bottle for like $3, $4. I've not bought it in a while. I don't know the current price, but that's how much it was when I bought it a couple years ago. You don't need a lot in here. You're just trying to put a few drops across everything. This is just to basically to help lubricate things. I would say 10, 15 drops tops is about all you're going to need in this thing. So about like so. Nice and free. You want just a little residual oil in the bottom. You don't want a ton. The more oil you put, the more resistance you're going to get. And the key to this is you're allowing the differential to free spin, and it helps the car rotate on corner. So, oops, I'm trying to put that on upside down. Brain fart moment. So see how this cap has these two posts. those two posts are going to sit on the two idler gears that are the farthest down. So they will go on like so. And they also have an indentation on the cap and also on the casing on both sides. So line those up, push that down. You'll feel a click. You'll hear a little audible click. And then go ahead and check it again. Everything looks good. So now we're going to go ahead and put our 4 screws back on. These do not have to be crazy tight, people. A lot of people, when they're working on RC cars, they think they've got to crank down on all these parts and pieces. You don't. They just need to be snug. Because if you start going crazy tight with a lot of these, you're actually going to break things. So this is to allow the car to rotate. So what happens is you've got 2 ginormous sized tires. They are oversized, comparatively speaking, to like a buggy, like a street stock or something like that. So they grip so hard on the track. So what happens is as the outside tire is trying to come around, the inside tire needs to basically slip to allow the right side to come around, especially on smaller tracks. If you have a bigger track, then you may want to use some kind of diff fluids or something a little bit thicker, because it's going to help keep both tires spinning equally, or it won't let it slip as much. But when you get on a smaller bull ring and you're needing to turn sharp quickly, allowing that front tire to rotate and the outside tire to come around faster is what this allows the car to do. So I'm going to put this up to the microphone, spin it so you can hear it. Nice and free. And that is how I rebuild a differential. So this is probably the hardest trick to teach and explain. So what you're trying to do is we're going to tear apart a bearing, and you're going to free up the bearing as much as possible and get rid of all of the drag that is on said bearing. So what you have to do is you have to pull the blue side protective cover off both sides of these bearings. A couple different ways you can do it, but I found using an X-Acto knife and being very careful to get up underneath it and popping it up on the side just like so, and setting that aside, and then repeating the opposite side. Get up underneath it, and popping that out, and then taking your bearing and putting it in acetone or brake cleaner, whatever it is that you have. And you want to do this to all of your bearings. I'm trying to do this so you guys can see. Sometimes it's not easy. And these are used bearings. I've not touched them. As you see, we tore apart this transmission together at the same time. That one was pretty dirty, and it's pretty caked up. Got a bunch of nasty gunk in it. And you're going to do this, like I said, for all of your bearings. Be careful doing it this way. You can cut yourself because you are using a sharp X-Acto knife. So you can use a pick. That's what I was originally using, was a pick, but I was having issues with destroying the races on these things. So I've learned to just use the back side of an X-Acto knife with a very nice sharp pointed tip on the end of it. Will help get all of these off. And the purpose of doing this is the blue Teflon that's around these seals are creating drag on a drivetrain or anything for that matter that it's attached to. So if you have, in this case, you have, what is it, 6? Yes, you have 6 bearings inside this transmission. Then you have 2 on each hub on both sides on the rear, an inner and an outer, or just one, depending on how how your rig is set up. All of that creates a small amount of drag. So I take this, I'm going to set this aside. That is brake cleaner, by the way. So now you're going to take one of your races, and it's going to be really hard to see, but I'm going to work from the back side because you can see the metal. Take your X-Acto knife and gently go around this edge, and you're going to fill metal. We're not taking off a lot of material here. So as you see, that is the little amount that I am taking off of the inside of this bearing. You need to go around, clean this up. So take this mixture, mix it up a little bit. Keep working this occasionally. You're going to notice how much dirty this water is getting. And I don't know if you can see the particles floating, but that's the gunk that was inside your bearings. So pull this guy back out. Take a look at it. Like, this thing still looks pretty nasty. It's got all kinds of grease inside here, and that's the grease that you're trying to get out, is what's caked in here between these bearings. See all the black gunk that I'm getting out of this? That is what you're trying to get out of these bearings. So keep working this because you're trying to get all that grease out. That grease is what creates the grease and freeing up the drag on these races. Getting these things spotless is critical on giving up all of the speed you can, and this is what makes or breaks a good build when it comes to getting that last 1/10 of a second per lap that your other person may not do. They probably won't take the time. This step alone will probably take you 30 minutes to an hour to do a whole car with the bearings and working the grease out and getting these races correctly trimmed up, but it is very, very, very important. I cannot stress it. So between opening up your diff and freeing up the power with your bearings are the 2 most critical components that anybody could do to any Mudboss or any oval race car for that matter. But in general, let me work on getting all of these trimmed up. I'm going to keep working on getting this freed up, and then I'll bring you guys back and we'll go ahead and put these back together. So I'll be right back, guys. So what you're going to do is take your idler shaft, and you can use this to demonstrate and see just how free that bearing spins. When there's zero drag, and that's what you're looking for. That's what you're trying to accomplish by freeing up these bearings. In this condition, the way that they are, they will give you the least amount of friction, which allows you to free up power. The problem is they're still exposed to the elements, and there's nothing in here to protect them in their current state. So what you do is you take the caps that you've already trimmed the inside off, gently put it right back on top, and just push down on it. That's all you got to do. Flip it over, and then take your same bearing oil that I was talking about, which is your rim oil. Put about 3-4 drops inside of it, and then go ahead and take another cap off the side, spin it around a few times if you want, just to make sure that it gets all around in there. So what you're doing is you're lubricating each individual ball bearing, and you're good. The problem with this is you're allowing more dirt and grime and stuff to get inside your bearing at this point. So the risk that you get with this is you can damage your bearings with wear and tear prematurely by doing this. So keeping up with your maintenance is critical on the life of these bearings. Some people will do this trick on the exterior, on like your hubs and so forth. I personally don't, because they are exposed to the elements a lot more than they will be if they were inside of your transmission, and that is my preference, that I don't do this on the exterior unless it is a vehicle that I am absolutely trying to get every last ounce of energy out of it. Then I will. So we're going to go ahead and put together our transmission now that we have everything cleaned, we have everything lubricated, we have everything set aside, so we are ready to reassemble. So first things first, put your 2 bearings in on your housing. Go ahead and put your 3rd one on the other one. So that is that. Now you have to figure out how you're going to want to set everything together. There's also going to be a bearing on the top section here, which is for your top shaft. And the last one is going to go right here. So there we go. So first things first, you're going to take your idler. I personally work with the idler first, just because it allows you to work with the other 2 from each other at the same time. I would suggest putting 1 shim on your shaft for your idler, then put your idler on, and then just go ahead and put your other shim on top of that. Take your top shaft, put your spacer on it, and go ahead and enter it into, oops, that's backwards, that's got to go this way. So go ahead and put one on the inside of this as well. So there you go. Check, make sure it spins nice and free, which it does. Then you can go ahead and place your diff in. You can put this in backwards, so pay attention. The differential metal gears need to line up with this whole square section. If you try putting it in the other way, it will technically work, but your gears barely line up on the edge. It may or may not mesh up, so pay attention to that when you're assembling that. So there you go. Also check, make sure it still spins free, which it does. So now you're going to take your top cover, you're gently going to close that up, and then let's go ahead and check again. And you can see just how free and the key is you want to keep this free, which goes back to why I told you about setting your screws and everything in the correct locations, is because when you go to start putting these in, you need to pay very close attention. They're all the same length. It doesn't matter if you keep them technically in the correct orientation that they came out of. My preference is to keep them so that way you don't lose track of where they go. So that is my preference on how I go about doing my transmissions. I am not going to go all the way in with this, and I'm going to explain why in about 30 seconds, but I personally am okay with using electronic, like screwdrivers and so forth, because I know where the limit is. I've done this enough. But if you're new, use a hand tool. because what will happen is you try to over tighten these, you're going to stress things out, you're going to put pressure on this case, which then puts pressure on your bearings, and then all of the work that you've just done to try to free up power, you've just killed by over tightening your housing, and it's putting drag on everything. So I've ran them in where they're almost all the way snug, but not completely. Check. Still nice and smooth and free. So take one screw. Notice, I'm not gripping hard. Still free. That could probably still be snugged up a little bit. Somewhere right around there. Still free. Do the bottom one. Somewhere right around there. Still free. Let's do the top one. About right there. Still free. Top middle. Felt like that was a little on the snug side, and I feel like I lost some. So what we're going to do is we're going to back that one off a quarter of a turn, which is right there. That looks pretty good. So that is how I prep my transmissions for my Mudboss builds. So let's go ahead and rebuild our rear end and put everything back together. So start by getting everything back in the orientation that they need to be, which is just like so. Put in my drive shaft for this side. Start by setting, oops, I almost forgot probably one of the most important parts, and that's going to be getting a small piece of black tape or piece of vinyl, or honestly, you could even use shipping clear tape if you really wanted. I don't suggest it. Any kind of tape and covering up your bottom port on your transmission. Why is probably going to be the question. Why are you going to take that extra step? Because what that does is that seals off this unit from getting dust or anything off of this base plate when you go to running and racing your gear. So some people will drill holes in them and they will re-lubricate this. I am personally not a fan of doing that, but you can if that is what you want to do. They may put like a small hole, like a service hole, like right here, and they can put a little like dauber on it, and that would allow you to get some oil down in there. Personally, not a big deal. It's all preference. Oh, I also forgot. During the assembly section, once you put your idler gears and everything together, you can put a few drops on there as well. That will help keep everything lubricated and semi-cool during a race. It's all metal. Yeah, it's going to get a little warm, but a little lubrication is not going to hurt anything. Yeah, I'm sure there's an adult joke in there somewhere. Not intended to be, but the rear arms. So let's go ahead and attach these. We can actually go ahead and screw in those bottom screws while we're upside down as well. That is one side. That is one side. 2, 3, 4. So to work on these, you need a 1.5 millimeter, a 2.5 millimeter Allen head. Always use a good quality tool. It does not have to be MIPs. That is what I personally use. It is also what I suggest. There's other toolkits out there that will work, and they will work just fine. But I have been in a bind, especially in some races, where I could not get a bolt out because my other tool set stripped it, especially trying to get in at an angle. There we go. So last part is these two pins, which are 1.5 millimeter. That is one side. Grab my 1.5. Screw this guy on. I usually use the tool to help get that guy lined up. Run that down until it's flush. There you go. Repeat this side. A little bit of fight sometimes. It happens. And then I did not have the slipper assembly attached on this during the disassembly, so we will go ahead and show you how that gets attached as well, because I have that right there in the box, or sorry, the bag. So start with your pin. Your pin is going to go inside. Then this slipper assembly has a notch, which is going to slide in just like so. And that will line up to that pin you just put in. Then it has a clutch system and a disc. That is going to go on just like so. Then your clutch disc. Then your spring, and then your nut. You can adjust this accordingly. I go pretty tight just for the simple fact that I don't want it slipping. So that, again, is also an adjustment tool that you have. But do your final check is grab it and spin it, and it should spin nice and free. This only will make you faster once you are at the point with your chassis and your setup where you're able to put down a 95, 96, 97% consistency every single race, every single time you go out there, and you're trying to squeeze just that little bit more extra speed out of your car. This trick and tip is what you need to get that extra speed. This isn't going to make you a better driver. I hope that makes sense. So do your final check just to show you. And that's what you're trying to do with your transmission. Taking it and making it that free is hands down the most important thing out of this entire build series you can do for any of your Mudbosses. And that right there just shows you proof of how well a transmission, when it's built correctly, free, loose, the whole 9 yards, that is exactly what you guys are looking for when it comes to freeing up all the power and getting this car to do everything that you need to do. So stay tuned, guys. We got some more build video series coming up. I hope you guys enjoyed the transmission and the differential build video series. I know this video was kind of long. I appreciate you guys making it this far. If you haven't, please go and subscribe to my channel. I would appreciate all of that. Comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. If I missed something, or if you guys want to see something extra that I haven't covered yet, let me know down low in the comment section. And also make sure you guys like these videos. Give it a thumbs up. That helps with the YouTube algorithms. I know I'm trying to pound you guys on these things, but it's how the channel grows. And I appreciate each and every one of you for making it this far in this video. I know this is going to be a long one. I apologize. And with that, we're going to wrap this video up. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful and fantastic day.